I was 7 when my grandmother took me to the tree line above the cradle veil and told me the valley was not empty, and that emptiness was the whole point. We are wardens. That word means nothing outside the veil, and everything inside it. For 26,000 years, since the Sundering, my family has walked the frost line where the old war ended, watching a valley the sky itself had once written off as dead. I patrol that line now. I was patrolling it the morning the sky opened and the Skarn Vanguard came home. They did not know it was home. That was the whole of their mistake. The Dominion had sealed this ground themselves, a lifetime of lifetimes ago, after a war whose name we no longer speak in full. They stripped what they could carry, poisoned what they couldn't, and left the rest to the ice, certain that nothing worth returning for would survive the cold they buried it in. Then they went home to their long empire and forgot us the way a man forgets a debt he never expects to be called on. We did not forget. That is the difference between an empire and a people who were left behind on purpose. My grandmother taught me the doctrine before she taught me to read. Skarn formations move in staggered wedges, she said, heaviest plate forward, scouts wide on the flanks, because a vanguard trusts armor before it trusts eyes. She taught me the old trade tongue too, the dead language the Dominion once used to issue terms of surrender, because a people who mean to answer a return visit properly do not wait until the visitor is standing in front of them to learn how to speak. I resented the lessons as a girl. I did not resent them the morning I needed every one of them inside of 30 seconds. I watched the first Skarn dropship come down through the thaw fog like a blade drawn slow, so its crew could look before they committed. Careful, disciplined, in their own cruel way. I have studied their doctrine my whole life without ever seeing a living one of them, and even from 400 meters, I could read the shape of their formation, heavy plate, weapons low and ready, eyes moving to catalog a ruin. There was no ruin to catalog. Below the frost line, where their charts still showed slag and silence, the long orchard stood the way it has stood for 1,000 generations, not wild, not overgrown, but tended, grown on purpose, root by root, into something the Dominion's own engineers had once dreamed of building and never finished. A living lattice, half grove and half fortress, its canopy threaded with fiber, grown to carry current the way a vine carries water. My grandmother's grandmother had planted the first rose by hand, in the dark, before there was proof it would ever matter. Every warden since has added a season to that work, and asked no one whether it would be needed in their lifetime. It was needed in mine. The lattice does not announce itself from a distance. That is by design. From the frost line it looks like an unusually orderly forest, nothing more. And the Dominion's charts had never bothered to update past the word ruin. But I have walked those tiers since I was a child, small enough to be carried on my grandmother's back while she checked the root graft joints, and I know what the canopy is actually built to do. Every tree in the long orchard was seeded from a line the first wardens cultivated with cuttings, smuggled out of the old Dominion arsenals, before the Sundering sealed the pass. Engineered growth meant for weapons platforms, repurposed by people with no weapons platforms of their own, grown slow and patient into something that could hold a line without a single soul ever pulling a trigger. The Vanguard's lead warrior stepped off the ramp first, tall, plated in scale the color of old iron, a rank sigil at the throat that marked him a Vanguard captain of the old cordon fleets. He looked at the orchard the way a man looks at a locked door he was told was empty behind. Then he looked up, past the canopy, to where the lattice rose in tiers along the valley wall, and became, unmistakably, a wall, not stone, not steel, but grown, patient, and armed. I have never seen an alien face go still like that, not slack. Still, the way a man goes still when the arithmetic he built his whole strategy on stops adding up in front of him. He gave the order to hold position. I will give him that much. He did not panic, and he did not fire first. Whatever else the Dominion is, it did not raise cowards. But holding position meant standing in the one place we had spent 26,000 years preparing to receive them. and the lattice does not care how still a man stands. The canopy woke section by section, the way a held breath finally lets go. Not with fire. We do not need fire in the long orchard. Root cable and current met plate armor at the joints, and the Vanguard's forward line simply stopped being able to choose where their own limbs went, held upright and harmless in a grip grown soft enough to spare a life, and hard enough to end an argument. No screaming, no slaughter, just a valley closing its hand. That was when she came down through the canopy to stand between them and us. We call her the Warden Mind, though she has an older name that only the eldest of us still use aloud. She is not a person the way I am a person, and she is not a machine the way their ships are machines. She is what 26,000 years of patient cultivation grows, if you plant intention instead of grain, a guardian raised out of root and current, and the accumulated discipline of every warden who fed her instead of fearing her. She had never once, in my lifetime, needed to walk. She walked now, and the Vanguard captain, held fast in the lattice's grip, did the only thing left to him. He looked at her, the way his ancestors must once have looked at a veil they assumed they'd already killed, and he asked, in the old trade tongue our archivists still keep, whether this was vengeance. She told him no. She told him it was accounting. I will not pretend I felt nothing standing there, watching a war that could have ended us, instead simply stop, mid-motion, on the strength of roots planted before my grandmother's grandmother had a name for what she was building. There is a grief in it too. 26,000 years is a long time to keep a promise nobody made to you. A long time to raise children who might die still keeping it. We were never scrappy. We were never desperate. We were patient, and patience is its own kind of cost, paid a season at a time by people who never got to see whether it would matter. It mattered. The Warden Mind released them one by one, plate by plate, until only the Vanguard captain remained held, and to him, she gave the last of it. Not a killing, not a cage, but a choice. 5 of his warriors, unarmed and untouched, to carry word back through whatever channel still answered to the old Dominion command, that the veil they had sealed as spent ground had spent 26,000 years becoming something else entirely, and that whatever they had once buried here to die had, instead, simply grown up. He did not thank her. I did not expect him to, but he looked at the orchard one more time before the lattice let him go, and this time, he did not look at it like a locked door. He looked at it the way a man looks at a debt he understands, finally, that he owes. I walked the frost line again that evening, same as every evening since. The canopy had gone quiet, current settling back into its long, patient hum, and somewhere below the tree line, the 5 scarred survivors were being fed and watered by hands that could have done otherwise, and chose not to. My grandmother used to say, the veil never needed us to win, it needed us to still be here, whole, the day someone came to check whether we were. We were here, we had always been here. Later, after the Scarn dropship had lifted the 5 survivors back through the thaw fog, and out past whatever line still separated us from the rest of the Dominion, I asked the Warden Mind whether she thought the message would be believed. She said belief was not the point. The point was that it would be repeated, generation to generation, the way our own warning had been, until it became doctrine, the way ruin had once become doctrine, until no Scarn captain ever again looked at a sealed valley and assumed the silence meant surrender. I think about my grandmother's hands on those first rows, more than I think about the Vanguard captain's face. She never lived to see whether the orchard would matter. Neither did the 7 generations of wardens between us. That is the part of this valley's history no chart will ever properly record. Not the day the answer finally came, but the 26,000 years of ordinary mornings, when answering it seemed like a fool's promise, and we kept the rose anyway. That is the only warning the cradle veil ever sends, and it does not need words. It only needs 26,000 years of an orchard nobody stopped tending, standing exactly where the old empire left it for dead.